Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Nillers. I am the senior community at Bohemia. I just want to say welcome. You are welcome to today's Arma 3 Zeus and Eden Editor stream, where today we'll be discussing after nearly 10 years how Arma 3 became what it is today. And I'm going to be joined by a very special guest, designer for Arma 3, but we will talk who will be basically giving us some background and behind the scenes knowledge on coveted features. Before we start, I just wanted to say that all viewers are welcome to ask questions about Zeus or Eden Editor or feel free to throw them in the chat throughout the stream, and we'll be collecting them for answering later on during community Q. So for now, let me introduce our honored guest. Right. Hello, Karel, and how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing fine. You?
I am good being here. Just gonna double check my end because good. Anything cutting out? All right. All right. So, well, first off, said welcome. I just want to basically get us right into this. Talking about can you give us a little about who you are and maybe actually how do you pronounce your name? That might be a good way to start.
Well, Karel is simple, but the second name Mořický is the very beautiful Czech name with R in it. And if you can say Řeřicha or 333 stříbrných stříkaček, it's that kind of tricky. But I got used to being called Karel Mořický, so let's stick with that.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I didn't want to slaughter that. So so can you just tell us a little about who you are and basically how long have you been part of Bohemian?
So right now I'm creative lead at Bohemia Interactive Amsterdam, so that's smaller studio, a bit further away from all the Czech studios. But on Arma 3, basically all the time there, I was a designer, and I started actually at Bohemia in 2006, which let me count 17 years. I should not have counted that. And before that, I was even modder on Operation Flashpoint since basically release 2001. I remember playing even the demo at friend's PC because I did not have PC to run Operation Flashpoint, so I was going to a friend and we were playing some mission. And when he died, I was then playing, and then we had this hot seat. We were switching roles, and we kept playing even just the demo. But so it's natural because it was a Czech game. Any Czech game in Czechia for Czech players was immediately like must play it, however hard what is, however unforgiving it was. And yeah, then I started modding it. I was mission maker, so that's kind of designer that I was making bit non-flashpoint missions. I was very much inspired by Hideo Kojima, and I was always, oh, here's a tactical military simulation game. Maybe I will add cutscenes and I will add some espionage stuff and basically taking it in completely different direction. But yeah, in 2006, Ivan Buchtanov, for a long time creative director on Arma series, he then asked me to join, and I've been on Arma series ever since.
Yeah, and so I guess like you already mentioned you were a modder and you on board. Can you kind of talk about a little bit of like the different contributions that leading up to like Arma 3 I'm working?
Contribution up to Arma 3, you mean before Arma 3 even?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in 2006 it was that weird way there was Steam was it even if Steam was out, it was super young, so it was still very much about physical editions. And so first Arma was out in Czechia, but it was not yet officially released in Europe and United States. It was this bizarre situation. I remember I was brought in to make some exclusive missions for European and then later American release, and like being a modder basic. I was still studying in high school back then, and I just so imagine for a modder being invited to the HQ in Mníšek Podbrdy and then just casually CEO inviting you to then to discuss what the missions could be about. And it was like, I fanboyed, yeah. And then I remember we discussed like some outline of the missions, and then the whole week it was luckily very like stale period at school, so no tests, nothing. So I remember every for the whole week, every time I returned from school, I just tap, clicking and mission making, basically barely eating. My parents probably did not get to see me much, and really intensively like I want to prove I can make mission. And I think I ended up with something back then decent. Now I think I would be a bit ashamed of it, how buggy it is, and I'm overly ambitious. As you know, there was time in in modding. Some people may remember it that like if you were not planning and if you did not announce a campaign of 20 missions, you were nobody. So of course ambitions were high, and yeah, since then I moved to Arma 2, where I was a bit tired of mission making, so I was making more systems like civilian systems. And on Arrowhead, I did the what was it, town generator. But again, I was growing tired of systems, so I remember I was having a side project of making some post-apo mission, but long before Daisy, before post-apo was cool. And so it turned out to be Eagle Wing, and then I was approached by Bogdan Marek, like, oh, that's cool stuff. Don't you want to release it officially? It's like, duh, of course. So I also made some small free DLC. It was actually Christmas gift in 2009, I believe, 8, some long time ago. So yeah, I always was gravitating. Like, nice thing about Bohemia, it's a large enough company to be able to make bigger than indie games, but it's small enough that it's not that in bigger companies it could be you either task people to make 20 lamps, or you're the one making a single lamp. And Bohemia was always that you can carve your great responsibility, and but it was more creative freedom in my mind. So I was always able to sometimes I'm making systems, sometimes making missions, sometimes UI, and as is the topic of today's stream, sometimes it's development tools.
And I guess yeah, like crazy how much you've bounced around. But I guess it's more specifically since why we're here. 10 years of how were you necessarily involved with Arma 3 during your time?
So Arma 3, I'm not sure. It's originally started as a expansion in a Brno office, and back then we were in Mniszek developing Take on Helicopters, which is technically not Arma, but it's on Arma engine. It's set in Armaverse, so it is Arma. Let's face it, just less guns and more rotors. And that was 2011. I remember when we released it. It was just around the time when there was basically Arma 3 development was ramping up. It was accelerating. So of course we then joined the project. And what was I doing back then? I think I started mainly with consolidating or helping to consolidate UI and little odd jobs here and there. But as we will get to it, then it turned out to be Zeus.
Yeah. So I think you've clearly shown that you've done quite a bit over the last a lot of contributions to the whole. So I guess I just want to focus on two things, particularly Zeus and Eden. So let's start with the first one. Obviously, everyone knows and loves Zeus, but for those who don't know, could you briefly describe, like in your own words, what the Zeus update was and what role you played in its development?
So Zeus, yes, my dog
dog.
is contributing to this interview.
Yeah.
Meet Marcy. Anyway, Zeus, I think the best summarize, it's a dungeon master. You have one person managing the mission in real time, creating and managing the mission, while players on the ground are then reacting to what they create. So it's much more like We like to think it's much better than, for example, procedural systems, because players can really tailor the experience to what they really want. Every week they can play something completely different with very little preparation. You don't need to create long and complex mission which needs to adapt to everything, because let's face it, Arma players are very known for, well, derailing the original scenario. It's like, your task is go to that hill, but what's there? Let's go there. And of course, in normal missions, you very often have to really players deviating from golden path. You have to set up triggers and conditions, a radio conversation, making sure that players are informed, not on, that they are on the wrong path. Meanwhile, when you have Zeus there, you don't need to have this. Just Zeus sees players and can either ask them to go elsewhere, often like role playing the base, like, this is Papa Bear, please refocus on your objective, or just casting lightning at them. That will definitely deliver the message.
Oh, Zeus bolt here.
Yeah.
And so I guess on the second half of that, so what part, or were you the only person who worked on it, or who that was involved?
So whole Zeus was pretty much developed by me and a programmer, Filip Sadovsky. He sadly no longer works in Bohemia. He's in STS, the guys behind Euro Truck Simulator. And basically we have this really, I dare to say, efficient duo, that he was the guy who would program everything, because a lot of Zeus is on... This is getting ridiculous.
I think he.
A lot of Zeus and actually Eden is on C++ spice, really directly in the game code, because it's more efficient. So I was doing mainly the design side. I would be like document everything in our internal network. How is everything supposed to behave? And then I would be doing the configuration. I would be doing the UI. So I think you could really summarize it. I was doing the front end. He was doing the back end.
Basically, two-man army.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's not to say, like, it's not like he was just mindlessly clicking my ideas. He had a lot of contribution to himself, because of course he had in his head how everything worked on technical side, and so he could very efficiently see, like, okay, we're doing this thing, and in the future there will be another feature related to this, so we may as well do them together. So really he had the whole project in his head, at least the technical side, and even the design side. Like, very often in Bohemia, I've encountered designers who also were doing design. The lead programmer back then, he would be doing a lot of aircraft, like the airplane targeting design, because he was really into it, and then this part of authenticity. And so again, it's rarely in Bohemia you have only one job.
Yeah. So I guess on a larger scale, how did the concept come about? Like during the planned, or like how did it?
One word: Daisy. You've probably heard of Dean Hall. Did you hear of Dean Hall? There's this guy called Dean Hall. Before, you may have known Daisy, and that's his contribution on that, or like his creation of it. He was actually the principal multiplayer designer on Arma 3. He was the guy charged with creating something along Arma Reforge's conflict, really game mode which spans the whole terrain. Well, I think the best would be compared to the new Warfare, like those seasoned players from Arma 2 remember Warfare. And of course, we wanted something similar in Arma 3. And he was in charge of the development. However, he was also doing Daisy on the side, and that at some point it exploded in popularity. And we could not ignore it more and more. And he started then developing Daisy in his full time. Very cool thing for players. It established new genre. It was good for the company. It was less beneficial for Arma 3, which then ended up with no multiplayer programmer, or there was Celery, the other multiplayer programmer, but he could basically try developing a major multiplayer mode alone. So that was, I don't know how long before release, but it was basically already at the time where the dates were set, and we knew that we cannot deliver the major multiplayer mode. As you may remember, Arma 3 was even released without a campaign, something which I should not mention. Let's remember everything was fine. Well, so few months or a year, I don't know exactly, I don't remember exactly how long, we were with a big dilemma. What will we do with multiplayer? We had some small multiplayer missions planned. There was something around some basically small story missions, co-op for like 4 or 8 people or something like that. They're basically nothing major. They were cool missions, but they were not the system sellers. And I remember back then, at this opportunity, I dust off my some older idea from Arma 1, where I was inspired by VBS, Virtual Battle Space, the military simulator, which is running on Arma engine. And despite the common confusion, that is not developed by us, it's developed by Bohemian Interactive Simulations company, which shares the name, but it's now a completely different company. Back then, there was still connection, but still, as a player, I was inspired by their 3D editor, real-time editor. So I pitched it because it looked like it would be the easy way out. Look, we don't need to design new mode. We will make a tool for people to design mode. Let's face it, they probably know it better than anyway. And because mainly also we realized Arma already does everything which is needed for Zeus. It was capable of creating entities on the fly, giving them waypoints. AI was able to dynamically react to situations. There was, thanks to the strong platform, there was very little actually hard coding. And when you think of it, Zeus is just an interface for what Arma was already capable of doing. When you think of it, actually, Zeus was almost already possible 5 years before that, even longer, if there was, of course, if there were resources. And so we started developing it. Obviously, it was not possible to release it together with the main game in September 2013, but then we pushed it out. I believe we announced it in March and then released it in May or something like that. So it followed up shortly after release, and I dare to say that it became the staple of the platform.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you kind of touched on it, but what was the main like design goals or the intentions behind Zeus? Was it always about being able to provide that to the community so they can do their own thing, or what was there other reasons behind that?
Yeah, it was, as you say, it was to empower the community. At the beginning, we were experimenting with some ways how to gamify Zeus. It's probably less known that there are actually some more gamey Zeus missions where you have, for example, sector control, with each of the factions have Zeus who can actually place only entities of the same side. So NATO Zeus can place only the NATO soldiers, and that player does not even see the CSAT players. But and then we had some more ideas for this gamified Zeus, this asymmetric multiplayer with one player RTS, another players on the ground. But in the end, it turned out to be that the most or the strongest aspect of this tool is allowing players to do whatever they want, especially like, fair enough, not necessarily on the public servers, because that could lead to disaster. So there had to be some limitations. So for example, that's why by default you cannot drag players around. There's even some restriction zone around them, but the closed communities where you can trust your Zeus, or you think you can trust Zeus, and they will just surprise you. Anyway, it's usually somebody you know. Then they usually turn off all the restrictions off because, well, Zeus needs to be the powerful god.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and obviously people play it very differently and wildly, like because Arma is a sandbox. So, like you were saying,
Yeah.
private and public, there's different ways to do the same kind of thing. But I guess that also tags into, as you mentioned, there's other game modes kind of similar to out there. But what were the inspirations for this to kind of design? Were there any influences or mechanics that you kind of took from other things to make this feature?
I think I will return back to what you said. Like, the people play Zeus differently. I think one thing with inspiration, like right now, Zeus is quite established. Like, people know what to expect from it, especially at least Arma players. But I remember back then it was an idea, but it was almost like difficult to grasp it. What can it do? What can we expect from people? How can we expect the use? It was very much in the air. So we took inspiration from, well, I already mentioned that VBS, the 3D editor there, but we took we had a range of inspiration. For example, we are looking how Unreal and Unity are doing things, really game engines, not just mission making tools, but tools in which you can create games from scratch. And the opposite end, we were looking at console editors. There is Little Big Planet, the small Mario-like game with a Sackboy, basically a platformer, and it has very powerful editing tools. And also, I remember I really liked Infamous 2, which is game. It's a PlayStation exclusive. Actually, both of them are PlayStation exclusive. And Infamous 2 also had a very powerful editor, very much like what we have in game in Arma, where you have, like in Unity and Unreal, you have to create everything from scratch. And that's not something we wanted. And that's, to be fair, not what Arma even allows, because in Arma, you always start with the terrain. You have the terrain. You have some soldiers. You have vehicles. You have a tool set of stuff you can do around. And Infamous, I remember, was very much like that. You had the New Orleans like looking city, and you had like again some soldiers, player character. But as opposed to Arma, they had no alt tab to text file where you could be writing SQL file. They had to really do everything in game. So it was very good inspiration for how you can manage mission editing, including triggers and waypoints, purely in game. And I don't think we were even able to recreate it. For advanced stuff, you still need some coding, even though we have tried some, like bring some modules and automated system. Still, compared to console-only editors, they had no other choice.
Yeah.
And another inspiration, of course, we took were from RTS games, really pure RTS. I'm a big fan of Command and Conquer, rest in peace, sadly, to this series, and World in Conflict. So there were several of, because we are also thinking, what if people want to play it as RTS? And still, when we were thinking, what if we want to use it as RTS with some resource management and limiting of Zeus? Then we wanted to see what rules and what interface is used by general RTS games. And of course, I cannot not mention there was a Mission Control Center. It's a mod for Arma 3, and I was started at Arma 2, and essentially did like what Zeus. I remember was always confused by the interface, so we were thinking that it should be more like what you see, what is what you get. But it was with Mission Control Center, we mainly wanted to see what would be players' expectations, because there was already some tool which allowed tweaking mission on the fly. So we saw what are popular features or what is generally not used much, and that inspired or somehow influence our decisions about prioritizing.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say like there's now that you brought it up, there's a lot of things that I think back, and even Arma 2, where there was somewhat hints and like of like those same type of features that yeah, it just there's a long stream of development in terms of ideas that just kind of came together. But I guess what were some of the technical challenges when you were developing this? Like, how did you like what kind of things did you encounter, and how did you overcome them?
I think the biggest technical challenge was also the one which was the most worth it, and that was to keep it moddable. We could have easily hard coded everything. Really, this is the interface. These are the rules. You can place only these soldiers, these vehicles. But that's not how Arma works. That's not how Arma platform works.
Mm-hmm.
So not only we wanted to be like if somebody adds a new mod and with like 10 tanks and 15 new soldiers, well, of course those assets needs to be placeable in the editor. And of course, going beyond, we wanted the editor itself to be moddable. So pretty much every feature had to have some script command which would control it. There had to be event handlers for which the modders could listen to and react with some events. The all interface, all parameters, basically everything had to be exposed in config. Like if there was some, I don't know, camera speed or icon which is displayed on units, everything had to be in config, because again some modder may want to change it. And I think Sumrak, he is a developer on DayZ. He actually took Zeus and made original war mod for it. So basically, RTS game. He used Zeus to make RTS game, and that was partly possible because he was able to mod the hell out of it. But yeah, I think in the long run, of course, it was challenging, and we had to think also about the backwards compatibility and whatnot. And so sometimes it was like, oh, face palming, but it is the longevity justified it perfectly.
Yeah, I think in the long run, yeah, definitely a benefit for.
To be fair, it's not only in Zeus Eden. Like we struggle. That's generally the biggest design challenge in almost any feature in Arma 3, and of course the older Arma 3 was, and on Reforger as well. The balance between we can make this quickly but less moddable, or we can really think it through. It will take some time. It may take some iterations, but it will be moddable. I'd like to say we are always doing it moddable, but sometimes we have to, we have deadlines. We have to finish stuff, and sometimes we like to return to it later. Not always it's possible, but we definitely, at least we always are thinking how to do it moddable. And even if we find out, okay, it is not feasible now, at least we need to evaluate.
Yeah, I guess the better question for that is how do you strike that balance between deciding it to make it moddable or to ultimately decide to keep something basically fixed or like you said hard coded or something like that? Is it based on like just the general element or feature, or is there more to
If it's of course case to case, like one deciding factor very often is of course performance. Like yes, if this thing would be moddable, but it would I don't know shave off 1 FPS from the game, is it worth it? Or but often to be fair leads that okay, the first thing we came with is not good, so then we find a different moddable solution or moddable, which is I don't know going only 80% of the way or 3/4 of the way, which is still moddable enough. But and to be fair, that's very often we find out that that's perfectly fine. But the performance is very much deciding factor throughout everything. And of course, what was painful lesson to me as a modder myself is it's not if the stuff can be moddable, but whether it should be moddable. I remember in Arma 2, the civilian system I made fully moddable. You could tweak every single part of it. And you know what modders did when faced with it? Like this crap is too complex. We will write our own system. So not everything often needs to be moddable. Sometimes having it just like thinking about what really needs to be moddable, what will likely people use the most, and the more advanced stuff could be like either hard coded or it could be sort of moddable but not easily. One moment, I will need to release the dog because she's too needy.
Yeah, got doggo. Everyone in chat who has a dog is like, I understand.
I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry.
you're
She
good.
will be happy in the other room. So yeah, so the performance and then actually the philosophy of if it's really needed. But it's very difficult to find out. I have an interesting story from when we were developing Arma 2 private military company DLC, super small DLC. So we had very limited budget, and I remember for a story campaign, I wanted one particular sniper rifle. We had it almost modeled. It was planned for cancelled game 2 project. So we were told we have basically okay. I would want artists to finish the sniper rifle, and then we can use it in the story campaign. But at the same time, Joris Jan van Land, who later became project lead of Arma 3, back then he was doing Armory, so this procedural library of assets / procedural mission generator. And he said, you know what? I want bleachers, like the stands, like sports stands, for there because it will make the armor really look like event. It's like bleachers. This game doesn't need bleachers. Give me my sniper rifle. Well, turned out to the bleachers ended up there. I was devoid of sniper rifle, and whatever. We move on. And then years later, super viral YouTube video explodes about the battle bus. Basically, people use attach to command to take a bus, and they put bleachers on the side. They attach it and some machine guns and fortresses and basically the usual Arma battle bus.
Yeah.
And I see it like nobody could have saw it coming. Like this absolutely innocent, seemingly like a useless asset turned out to be the paramount part of this viral video. So yes, you never know how people will model it.
Yeah, and yeah, I remember in the hype and the sharing of the battle bus was going around. And, yeah, oh man, and there's definitely been quite a few contributions like that since over the years. But I guess
That's actually one feature I regret that we did not have resources to add into Eden Editor, because we wanted native attaching, that you would, I don't know, synchronization. It's even prepared somehow in the code, just commented out, because it was mainly design, which we were talking about. Like, imagine you can, I don't know, using synchronization lines, you can group people together. But also we wanted that you would be using, there would be special synchronization line for attaching, and that way, without using scripting commands, you would be able to set up battle bus. But in the end, there was, it was not as priority compared to other features, and it sadly never got there. I think it should still be possible. I think the editor is moddable in a way that it should be possible, and who knows, maybe some mod edited. I must admit, I did not check the Zeus and Eden Editor mods in quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that leads to a better question. Was there?
I see in chat that Revo that people are asking. Yes, the Eden enhanced and Zeus enhanced. Yes,
yes.
Yeah, those are like, I don't know if you can really use Eden and Zeus without. Oh, I don't think Revo did Zeus enhanced, but definitely Eden enhanced. And yeah, I remember I even used it for either contact or loss of war. Yeah. There was some particular feature, I don't remember which one, but I found it useful. So like, oh look, we will use mod to check to do something for the official stuff.
Well, I guess like I said, that kind of leads into other parts. But were there other features or design choices that were maybe considered or started that were like ultimately scrapped or like didn't make it to the final product?
I think mostly when I mentioned that when we were planning to make Zeus, I will mention for Zeus because we'll get to Eden later. Yeah. But when we were still planning that Zeus could be more of a game mode, I remember there was really some crazy ideas for some small missions. Like one of them, oh God, how was it? It was a bit inspired by one mission in Gears of War. It was that Zeus would not be able to place anything, but they would control a flashlight which players could see. It would be utter darkness, and players would not have night vision goggles. And there would be a mission where basically Zeus would need to guide players through some territory. I don't know if I can't remember what were the enemies, what were the opposition, but the point is you were literally light for players. Similar to this was also that Zeus would be capable only of spawning artillery with some countdown, and it was more versus. So Zeus had to kill players with mortar, but of course, players were moving around, and so players would have to be learned to sort of scatter, so they are not all killed by a single shell. But Zeus, of course, only mortars, so not like cluster strike, and there would be countdown on it, so you could not just spam it like you can often do in Zeus, but you do a shell. It would of course make the sound, so players would be warned, and then let's say there would be 10 seconds counter before you can spawn a new shell. And again, players would have to just almost the race. Players would have to reach some end goal, and either they all die or whatever.
Some evil Zeus out there is like, this is a great idea.
Yeah, my favorite concept was though a little bit of like the spy mission where there would be a bunch of AIs doing their thing, AI soldiers, and players would be among them, and they would have to blend. Basically, players would have to pretend they are AI, and Zeus's goal would be to identify who is player. And for example, for every false positive, they would be remove, like lose some score, and either Zeus identifies all players or Zeus messes up too many times for it to be the end game.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately the unrestricted Zeus proved to be the something where we wanted to put the most resources. So these more niche ideas sadly never went beyond some early concepts or prototypes.
Yeah, I mean
actually, speaking of concept, I got randomly in my mind what popped up when we were mentioning how Zeus came up to be. I remember how I pitched Zeus to the rest of the team, where I think over a weekend I created fully scripted, not even prototype, proof of concept. I used 2D editor user interface, and I just opened it in the running multiplayer mission, and you were able to place waypoint and soldiers. Absolutely basic. And then I organized small multiplayer session for other designers. So I think it was like, what, 8 of us. They had no clue what's happening. I told them, look, let's play a new mission I created. Then we played it. It was some very simple defense where they have to the horde mode almost. They were defending some location, and I was just sending AIs on them. And I remember they were really almost a bit taken aback how the AI is reactive, and when they were on defending one side, the AI started going there. It's like, oh God, how they're good so good, and how can they react to us so well? And then they in the end revealed like, ha 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 ha, that was no system, that was me managing it, and now I can live in lightning.
Well, yeah, I think some of these ideas now that people are gonna hear and be like, "Oh, now I have a new mod or scenario to make after this." But yeah, I guess so. We've already touched a little bit on it, but I guess switching over gears to talking about kind of the Eden editor. So obviously with the Zeus, 3D kind of perspective and interface that you got, we ultimately resulted in getting to the Eden editor, which is also in that 3D and from the 2D editor. But was that just was that something that just was the next logical step, or how did the idea start? Was it something that was already planned, or yeah, can you just explain that, like how that came to be?
Well, already throughout the Zeus, we had some technical depth. There were some basically features we knew they are not working as we would want. We could have done them better, and already we were sort of preparing during in the late stage of Zeus, or even post release, that Eden editor, or back then it was of course not known as Eden editor, it didn't have a name, and we were starting to think this would be a logical step. We now have the know-how. We did it before, like, oh yeah, it is just Zeus, but offline. So it was very logical step for us. I think I did. Was it before? No, that was Arsenal. I did before. Yeah. So I don't think it was back to back. I think I did some other stuff in between. But very soon after that, I think 2014, when we returned from Gamescom, that was, I remember pretty much. I remember basically returning from Gamescom, getting up in Mishek, and because we somehow discussed it on the way from Gamescom, it's like, okay, I guess this is it. I guess we're making 3D editor. I also remember coming up with the name Eden back then. Like, Eden was supposed to be code name, but some people had some other ideas how it should be called, but I really did not like the ideas, and I sort of snag this code name, but it was obviously code name which was with intention that it will become the final name. And to extra justification, I was like, oh, it's a 3D editor new 3D EN, but the 3 is flipped and it's Eden.
Yeah.
And yeah, eventually it stuck so much. Also, it's a homage to Operation Flashpoint, where everyone was called Eden, and there was even mission Return to Eden. Except it now caused issues in Reforger, or confusion in Reforger, which has everyone again. And again, internally, it's called Eden, but very often we refer to Reforger's game master as Eden, and sometimes Zeus. It's just inertia which goes with us. And I remember, especially at the beginning, before we distinguish it again, I was like, "But you mean Eden as a terrain, or Eden as the editor?" Yeah. So yeah, sometimes the name kicks, but yeah, it was very logical step to take the same team, me and Philip, take our know-how and push it further. Like, it did not make sense to base it on Zeus because multiplayer and single player were a bit too much further away. That's the issue which we addressed only in Reforger, where it's literally the same tool for single player and multiplayer. But back then, we basically decided to start it anew. And it was not just copy of Zeus. We took what worked from Zeus, so we copy-pasted it, maybe cleaned it up, just to make sure we are doing it more clean. And it's very interesting because Zeus was very Wild West. It was really experimentation. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know often how to do it. Eden development in comparison, it was the smoothest ride because we fair enough, there were some unknown questions, but most of the time we knew what we are doing and we knew how we are doing it, and it really felt like very professional. So that was yeah, both is exciting. It's sometimes nice to have a development where it's really intense prototyping, and also have the periods where it's really we have a plan and we stick to the plan. And you can do, and again, I'll say same with doing the different features. Like you cannot be with that all the time. So after doing Eden Editor, I was happy then to do lots of for the DLC as a first project in Amsterdam Studio. And it's like I don't want to develop tools now. I want to do stories and missions and this cool humanitarian theme which is unexplored. And again, in Contact, it was more Scott Ellsworth who was doing more mission making and this story, and I was back then doing the systems. And so again, it's the constant, like the mind hygiene of not always getting stuck with one thing. I don't think I ever, for example, burnt out. I don't like it's just this constantly switching to something else kept me, I think, mentally sane.
And I think you talked about, or like you kind of hit it on the head a little bit with like, obviously, Eden has, I guess, let me rephrase this. So you were saying that basically you knew everything that was going into it. Like you had a plan and you were sticking to it, and like it seemed like, for comparison to Zeus, obviously. I guess that begs a better question of, did you kind of like know the kind of the like tools and the features that you would include up ahead, and then, or did you add things going on, or how did that stages of development really like work? Like how are decisions made on what things were going to go into it and what would not?
So one thing which was pretty much decided for us is Eden Editor, however revolutionary you can call it, it was no revolution. It was literally just taking 2D editor and adding extra dimension to it. Everything which worked because of backwards compatibility, we had to use the same logic of mission creation as in 2D editor. There had to be waypoints. Waypoints belong to groups. There are triggers. They can be synchronized to waypoints. All of these things which worked before had to still work. You can literally open 2D editor missions created in 2D editor. Our goal was that they can be open in 3D editor, and so you could then continue developing them. But because of this, we had the format of the mission, and for example, the fact that it's SQM, that was given, that was unchangeable. It was extendable. We could put extra information there, a list of add-ons. We could put like names there. So basically, we could add details, but we were unable to remove stuff or change stuff. So this was a very rigid condition, which very much defined what we are doing. And as it often goes with designing, it's very liberating to have a constraint. When you're supposed to design something out of nothing, that's the hardest thing. But once you start locking down things which are guiding you, realizing that it's much easier, that you don't need to think about this. These things are given, and let's focus on designing the other thing. And that very much actually helped to guide the process of Eden Editor. The whole architecture of missions was given, and we could really focus on quality of life. We could focus on user experience. Very often UX in context of Arma is being used as dirty word, like, it's something dumbed down for consoles. Especially recently for Reforger. And surprisingly, Reforger actual editor is not because of consoles, but that was, anything you complain, by the way, about design of Reforger, feel free to blame me. But for example, that was mainly because, again, that was something which we thought it's not working nicely in Eden Editor. Like back then, all those long hierarchy lists looked cool, but again, Eden Editor built on Zeus and Reforger Editor built on Eden Editor, and we try to address many of these things by making it more smoother. Sometimes it could feel it's for console. Very rarely, actually, it was very opposite. We did something for PC, and it's like, oh god, it feels nice, but how will we do it on console? But it's very, of course, experimentation, and I understand why sometimes players would not be happy with that, especially when we are changing tool which they used for, well, if not 10 years, then 6, 7, 8 years. So any change is, of course, controversial. And we learned a lot. Same with Eden, like when we changed something, where people kept using 2D editor because 3D editor is so slow. I mean, they are right. But at the same time, Like depends on what you're making. In most scenarios, the having actually seeing what you're editing and not having to remember in 2D editor where I want to put two sandbox next to each other. I move some icon, play mode, check there, go back, few pixels here, play mode, check, get back, flip tables, and then 3D editor. Oh yeah, you don't think about it, you just put it there. So in most of the situations, you don't. The loading speed of getting in it is reasonable sacrifice for having the ease of use value inside of it. And of course, so yes, people were complaining about Eden compared to 2D editor, and people of course complained with Reforger compared to Eden. And in many use cases, they are right. It's about us to understand what those use cases are and go towards them. Again, forwarding or flash forwarding to Reforger. I know we are not here to talk about Reforger, but I remember when we released that editor and people complained, oh, I have to open a new window to access even the units we want to place. And it was really, we had already back there some idea for what we called quick hand, like those icons at the bottom of the screen where you can start placing without opening your screen. We had it somewhere prepared, even analyzed, but we did not give it priority. And when we saw player reactions like, actually this thing has priority, and then we scrambled to put it there. And I dare to say it's better. If it's the best thing, remains to be seen. But of course, it's always you change some, you improve some use case, and you make some use case worse. That's very Arma thing. I remember a few years ago we fixed something in Arsenal. By the way, I also made Arsenal, and there was some bug that if you loaded your saved loadout, it bypassed the limitations on the Arsenal crate, so you could literally use then any Arsenal loadout again. Years later, it's been there for years, and then we fixed it, and people complained that we fixed it. Basically, oh yeah, it was broken, but if we expected it to be broken, how dare you fix it?
Yes, and I think I think it's funny that you mentioned that people complained that it was slower for the the Eden editor, because I think back to even doing Arma 2 or doing in the early parts of Arma 3 with the 2D editor, like you said, placing something, loading into the mission. Oh wait, it's not the right height, so I have to go back out. We'll raise it up a little bit, add it. Like,
wait, no. Into the editor, you're not raising up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
You can raise something by script command.
Yes, as I say, like put in the script, change the number from 1.3 to 1.4. Yeah, things like that. So I think it's funny that I would hear that somebody would say that it's slower or something, like, unless you mean performance wise.
No, it's slower in use cases where you're doing very often preview back, because loading preview, that always took time, but returning back, when it was just 2D editor, there was no scene loading, so it was much faster. Yeah. But of course, what we were striving for is that when you have Eden editor, you don't need to go back and forth as often. But again, there are some use cases where it's valid, and sadly for those use cases, it's a step back.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess what you already kind of talked about a little bit of the decisions and like the choices of like even in a Reforger, but what were some of the complexity, like technical complexities, or the things that challenged you the most in implementing the editor? Like, because obviously you said the plan was pretty streamlined, but was there anything that made it difficult to like implement into Arma 3?
I think the backwards compatibility. I mentioned that, yes, it was a constraint, but it was very often we wanted to really innovate and make something different. But because there are missions which were like that, like it's not only about the tool, it's also about the mission, which is a result of the tool, that SQM file where everything is there. If we made some major change there, which would it render all existing missions obsolete? We cannot do it. By then there were already thousands of missions of workshop. And yes, we could then sort of fork it, that you would have old format and new format, but still that would mean that you have to maintain something twice, or then as the updates go, that would be multiple times. So very often with dev development, it's not about the cost of implementing something, but a cost of maintenance. And that's also was a very hard lesson for me during Arma 2 and Arma 3, that I have some cool idea, I implement it, and it seems cool at that moment, and it's very cool for us to implement. Oh, I spent one afternoon to implement this cool feature. But that, I think the best example would be the insignias on shoulders, basically shoulder patches I made for Arsenal, or maybe even before that. I don't remember when I did. I mean, the underlying technology was there. It was that in multiplayer there would be the squad logos there, would be displayed there. And what I just did, that on the other shoulder there will be the custom scripted insignia. Prototyped within half a day, some simple script of like having them in config, so you don't need to put there the textures directly. Basically, the system very quickly done. Maintenance of it, creating those insignias. Basically, you need some artists to create them. Fair enough, that can be doable. But then every single soldier we create from that point on had to have this configured. It had some negligible, but still performance impact. Of course, more soldiers, the more performance, because it's some, how do we call it, hidden selection. So it little by little, it needs to be kept in the memory. And there was also maintenance of maintaining it, because then, oh, we implemented it, but oh, it doesn't work in multiplayer. Oh, it's not saved in the save file, so when you load, they are gone, and then I had to be returning to it and then work. So what initially looked like super simple feature, it had very noticeable maintenance cost. And then I think it's very off, or like almost most taught lesson to junior designers when we are introducing them to Bohemia way of designing, the think of platform, not only game, and to making them realize it's not only about the initial design and creation, it's about how will this thing be working years on, and how will people who have to maintain it will be basically coping with it years on. And very often, if it's you who you need to maintain it, it's like, why did you do it, Karel, 4 years ago? Why? I think especially in Reforger now, because we switched to the new engine, we started developing the Game Master very shortly after we switched, at least Amsterdam Studio, to the engine. I remember I laid out a way how to make the editable entities, because, for example, in Arma, any entity was by default editable. You had to disable it. In Reforger, you had to configure it specifically for the entity to be editable. But the system I back then came up with, that it required essentially double configuration of everything. Not soldiers and vehicles, but if you have some, I don't know, a rock, you don't want this configuration for editable entities on every rock in the world, because it would kill the performance.
Yeah.
So what we had to do is to inherit from this prefab another rock, which was exactly the same, but had the configuration for editable entities. Easy to do, but oh my god, it still kicks us back every time we need to maintain these editable entities, and it's definitely now like the number one candidate for refactor. So for those, if there are any Arma Reforger modders listening to this who try to configure editable entities and figure out that they have to duplicate everything, I am sorry.
I think it's someone in the chat said it best, but sometimes the smallest thing that you wouldn't think about as a being an issue is sometimes the biggest challenge, or something like that. Or like the little things are often the bigger ones, but yeah.
And the worst thing is, once you start too much forward designing, like forward compatibility is a slippery slope. Because also I am guilty of very often, or not very often, sometimes thinking too much about how stuff can be used. And the example I did with the civilian mode, I keep so much thinking about the various way how it can be used, and it will not be used at all for that. So I think the best lesson is really, if you're designing or coding something, really code it for that particular use case. Don't try to make it one system for everything. Yeah, like tailor it, open it up so it's moddable, but don't try to really make universal solution for multiple features.
And I guess thinking about somewhat of the community, like what effect do you think the editor had on like the accessibility for those who are newer to mission creation, or versus coming from 2D to 3D? Like it would do. Like how do you think it like helped for people that are getting into it?
well, as with every Wysiwyg tool, of course, the goal was that it would lower the barrier to editing. That I remember when I got to Operation Flashpoint, I somewhere saw some PDF manual step by step how to set up a mission. And oh god, I remember back then in Flashpoint, not in SQF, in SQS, the conditions were that you put question marks, then question mark, then condition, then column, and then the statement. This was my first scripting language, so I was like, why is the question mark there? I guess because the author didn't know what to put there. I will just skip it. And then so I put just condition, the column, and then the statement. It's like, why doesn't it work? Because of course that was the manual for Operation Flashpoint, so it was of course half mission editing, half scripting. So our of course goal was that you would not need PDF manual. We wanted as much as possible in the game. That's why there is even that guided tour, or step-by-step guide, that little tutor, that universe that they have in top right corner, where there are some topics, and you can really have step-by-step guide where there would be this post-it notes throughout the interface. It shows you, look, this thing, this, and if you want to place waypoints, do this. That was actually inspired by Unreal, how they do the introduction. So we really wanted to have more teaching process in the editor itself, and of course, less reliance on script. We knew that advanced stuff is inevitable, but thanks to modules and thanks to, of course, seeing it in front of you and showing various states and icons, we wanted to make it easier for you to understand what's there and to set up a mission. The goal is that you can set up a mission without the coding, including briefing, including tasks, including debriefing, waypoints, but even possibly before that. Even we even have already for Zeus, we have some pre-recorded some HQ line, so you could play, I don't know, HQ telling you that good job and stuff. So simple mission you were able to set up very easily. And to be fair, that's a logic we followed in Reforger. Because we had to write everything from scratch, we knew that we cannot do all the logic part, but again, we wanted to give the game master as much power as possible, because of course a game master in Reforger was released as more of a Zeus, so, and similar with Arma 3 Zeus, there's no way how we can do scripting. I mean, there are some mods which allow you to, of course, to do script input, but have fun herding 50 players and writing scripts. I know there are people capable of that, but I think they can be counted in one hand.
Yeah, and I think I guess on the idea of the community, or focusing on the community,
I realized I did not answer the question fully. Sorry to interrupt you there. Well, because the idea was like how it improved. One of the struggles was also identify what we want to achieve at the beginning, because are we catering for really the pro players, or not pro editors, like the advanced users, or are we catering to the absolute beginners? And again, that went from inspiration. When we looked at, for example, I don't know, Little Big Planet, inspiration that was very easy to get in. No, it was more like medium to hard. It was very easy, very difficult to, or quite tricky to get into, because you had to create everything from scratch. But that infamous editor I mentioned, that was opposite problem, that you could easily, it was easy to set up mission there, but you were not able to do anything advanced. And I think we ourselves in the end targeted this sort of mid-core, that we knew that we cannot make it as smooth and or as user-friendly for absolute beginners. And we also knew that power users, we don't need to cater to them, because they have usually so specific ways how to use it that they will find a way. And no way we can anticipate it. So if we try to cater to them, we would probably make it be a hindrance for them. So we really try to cater to those mid players, mid advanced. So they still will need some external tutorials to get into it. But if they want to set up some basic mission with a little bit of scripting, they get the right tool for that. And then once they move to power user, like they essentially don't need almost editor at all. I remember in where was it, in Contact or Loss of War, there would be, like, for example, Loss of War. There was that Oreo Castro village which had multiple timelines, but a lot of those timelines compositions were not made by me. It was other people doing them, but I made the underlying system. And I remember I would be then there would be some period where I would be scripting everything, and I really had edit. I used Eden Editor really just to press preview mode, but a lot of the stuff I was doing was pure script and no editor at all. But at the same time, I was actually using the editor, and I even had an internal mod where to manage those various timelines. I had Oriokostro, pre-war, mid-war, post-war, basically for almost each mission I had it. And because I did not want to, I wanted to, there was one mission for Oriokostro, that hub, where all entities existed, and the only thing I was doing was showing them and hiding them. I had them in layers, but of course I did not, there were multiple layers, like this, and this layer belongs to this timeline, and this layer belongs to the other timeline, and some layers are shared. Of course, if I have to manually switch them, it would be, again, unsustainable. So I wrote a small mod that in the drop-down menu, I can just pick which mission or which timeline I want to see, and then went through all the entities and then show and hide only those which are really relevant. So I was actually modding my own tool to tailor it to the project we were actually developing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, the mod never got released because there was no point. It was purely for internal use. So.
Yeah, and I don't know. I forgot the point exactly you made earlier, but I think
the accessibility that I mentioned, that we were targeting more the semi-advanced user.
Yeah.
Mid-current.
And I think as the community, especially over the years, obviously there's been an impressive amount of content that has been produced from just the Eden Editor, from new users and olds, like veterans of the products. And but how do you feel about the impact it has had on the game, like in terms of longevity, for the whole series of Arma?
So of course, it's obvious that it increased the longevity or helped to contribute to it because it helped the creation of more missions. I must admit that starting around that time, I stopped playing Arma more actively. So I remember, because I was a juror on Make Arma Not War, so I back then played a lot of community scenarios, but that was before Eden. So they were still created the old way. But since then, myself, I did not play that much. So right now, from top of my head, I cannot think of any particular mission which I would see this was created in Eden Editor from community. But I could definitely see it inside of the campaign. Like Apex Protocol, those missions, they would not be possible with into the editor. The same for Laws of War, which really it empowered us to venture into completely different types of missions, and then later on in Contact the same. So definitely internally, I noticed the increased level of detail which people started putting into missions, suddenly creating a small composition, like the environmental storytelling, where you just see some small composition somewhere and you think about, oh, what happened here, what led to this place. That would have been possible into the editor, but it would be so complicated. I don't know what it would bother to do it. So already internally, both on our projects and all projects in like Tanks DLC and Old Man, I started seeing the same. Like Old Man, similar to Contact, actually used not procedural missions, but like modular missions, because they were. I cannot speak for Old Man. It was developed in Mishek by Sarge and CJ, actually both former modders. But in Contact, we had later stage in Contact, there's something we called free roam. I think two last missions, or second last and or third last missions, were a bit more open in nature. You could walk around Livonia and never hunt the aliens or search for aliens, and also interact with the local forces. And that mission was created in a way that it's quite large area. So if you spawned everything in one go, it would just be causing problems with memory. I mean, Contact. Anyway. So how we did it was that each of those little almost composition, little sub missions, sub stories, were their own editor mission. Like this hill, when you go there are these patrols, and you can find this and that. That was its own mission. We saved it. And again, I had some editor mod, which then did some extra processing afterwards, but it really configured it. And then when you play the mission, there are some, basically, you get near this area, it then dynamically spawns it. When you get further away, it just spawns it. And again, this would not be possible easily in 2D editor because first creating those compositions would be difficult, but also the fact that the modding that Eden editor and that like basically every of these area had some trigger which showed, okay, this is the spawn area, but it also did some automatic processing, because that was nice, of course, about Eden editor. You could run some scripts in it which then manipulated the entities in there. So definitely internally it influenced a lot. And as I cannot speak for specific examples how it influenced mission development outside, but I like to believe that it did.
Yeah, and I think even if you don't directly know, you can just see based on the sheer number of like I said, content that's out there, of scenarios that have been put out, or game modes and things like that. And
write me in chat what is the best mission which was developed in the editor. I will have my Arma 3 moment and I will play it.
Okay, all right.
I need to educate myself.
All right, throw them out there. Yeah, best mission. All right. You get mission or game mode or just mission?
And anything which was developed in, preferably a single player, because I don't have friends to play multiplayer.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we can hook you up. We can get you. I'm sure there's some people around, but
yeah. Since I have a kid, my multiplayer life is a bit reduced.
Well, like I said, we're kind of switching into the gear of community and thinking about that. But I just want to remind everyone also, feel free to throw in questions. We're about to get to our kind of a community Q&A, and we'll answer them. Just throw them in chat if you have them, and about whether it's Zeus or Eden Editor or Laws of War, anything. Let us know. But yeah, so I just want to ask you quickly, and we've already kind of touched a bit on this, but what did you ever envision that Zeus and the Eden Editor would be as so prevalently used by the community as it did, or like obviously you said earlier that it's like you had hoped it did, or that But...
Hey, we disabled 2D editor. They had no choice.
Yeah, it's true. That is true. Yeah.
No, I think you can access it. I think Control D or some obscure shortcut in the main menu will lead you to that. Or I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's somewhere on community wiki.
Yeah, defaulted anyway. But yeah, so I guess. Yeah, so did you ever think that people would basically fall in love with it as much as they did?
Since we loved it ourselves, I think we Control O apparently. Why Control O? Anyway, we like to do stuff which we would find ourselves fun. So of course, the fact that we started already see people using it internally was a strong indicator. Mm-hmm. But what was the most pleasant to see when people started modding the editor itself? I mentioned that we made it moddable, but we still what if we make it moddable and nobody comes? But on that end, we saw that people were modding Zeus. I always loved how the extended mods which were extending Zeus were called. They were so beautifully on brand. There was, which one was the first? The first was Ares, and it was renamed to Achilles the other way around. So I loved how they took, we have this Roman god, so let's take other Roman mythology to create and name our mods which are extending it ourselves. And then, of course, that continued with Eden Enhanced. Hello, Rebel, from the I saw you in the chat. So there were, again, mods which are, I do, like if you want to do cool stuff in Eden Editor, you need to use these mods because they really push it further. Again, some of them used included features which we sometimes wanted to include ourselves, but there was no time for them. But there was plenty of innovative stuff. And together with that, of course, I like to see how sometimes there were some asset packs. Like my favorite is the beach object. What was the guy? Pool pump. And it was really beach object. So you would have some inflatable mattresses and the seat, reclining seats for the beach, and really. Yeah, we have this war simulation, but I can just install this, put it in Eden Editor, create some nice idyllic, tropical paradise scene, or Scott Alsworth. I don't remember his nickname because he works for Bohemia, so now and he goes by his actual name. But he also created some pack of AAN, so he had some crashed AAN helicopter and some cameras. So it was nice to see these. really asset packs which are really intended to be used in missions. And I don't remember like really popularity of these specs before Eden Editor. There were some, but of course, because it was so difficult to make composition, then it was less justified to create just pure props.
Yeah, and I obviously, I mean, do you think that like mods, especially like the mods and the custom content, really enhanced like the mission creation process? Like you kind of were saying, yeah, touching on that. But do you think it like ultimately was a net gain for that for you reusing?
Wait, are you asking, did mods made the game better? Do you
Uh,
need me to answer this? Isn't it clear?
Well, I meant more specifically, did the Eden Editor in like connection with mods? Do you think that ultimately enhanced that like mission creation process? So like, did it make mods, or did it make mission creation easier and better?
I hope so. Revo, please answer in chat. Did they? Did they? No, of course they did. Like, let me Eden enhanced Steam Workshop. I will quickly Google how many subscribers it has. Let me see.
This is live.
292,000 of unique visitors. Okay, subscribers. 276,000 of subscribers. I remember in Operation Flashpoint, where my mod was played 100 people, I felt famous. Almost 300,000 people. I think that gives you answer about the popularity.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess on the same aspect of basically you're both for the features of Zeus and Eden Enhance. What advice would you give to someone who's like aspiring to be a game developer and wants to create some idea or creative, an innovative gameplay mechanic like such as Zeus and Eden Editor?
I always find this question is very cliche, and very often people will answer some super generic questions like, "Oh, play a lot, blah blah blah." But what I actually now always answer, so Montcalp, he's a modder who is part of the two-man team behind what's that Cold War CDLC got.
Global mobilization.
Global mobilization. Thank you.
Yep.
I always remember it shares the initials with the GM, and I always want to call
Yep.
it Game Master, and I have to stop it myself. Yeah. So Montcal, a guy from the team, in one of the interviews on Arma blog post, and I will parrot him because he had the most brilliant answer ever. If you ever have some tool, don't just start using it for what you want. Click on every button, expand every menu, learn about every feature this tool has. Because very often you may find out you're doing something ineffectively. You're doing some manual work, which maybe the tool automates, and you don't know. So really, and that very much applies to Eden, very much applies to Zeus, and in Reforge it applies to Game Master. Really, when you get the tool, place every asset, click on every button, see what everything does. Because if you don't do it, you cannot be as effective as you can be. So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay.
Also, I see Zeus Enhance has almost 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So, oh my god, these numbers are insane.
And that's just for like the.
How dare does this game to be so popular?
All right, so I guess, and like I said, I'll just remind everyone, just keep throwing out questions for things, and we'll get to it. But I guess of these two features between Zeus and the Eden Editor, is there one that you enjoyed working on more than the other, or were they both equally as fun for you?
I think I mentioned before they were fun for different things. Zeus was more innovative and crazy experimentation. Eden was more stable. What I think enjoyed the most was when, especially on Zeus, I think, yeah, but actually for both, because they had the spirit of early access, where they were on the dev branch, but not yet on the stable branch. And I remember especially on Zeus, we released it during one of the live streams. It was surprise, by the way. There will be no surprise release after this. But we released it, and then people really started playing it. I remember it was, I think, it was from April to, it was few months of early access. And I remember we saw people playing it, and with that, we started adding some small quality of life features and improvements. I remember you can hit moving vehicle with lightning, and I shared on Twitter whether you see the Aiden flying and you hit it with lightning, or the small things like somebody mentioned it back then on forums. It was even before Discord era, so we were monitoring forums. There is some of that idea that if you rise vehicle or a soldier in the air, maybe they could be moved into parachute and then slowly parachute out. It's like, oh my god, this makes sense. And I literally coded it in. It was something I was able to script. So really, you increase the height of a soldier in Zeus, and then he's moved to parachute. And it was very, very fast-moving era because we were really, there's the idea, prototype it, put it in the game. There's the idea. Because it was small things, there was very low risk of the stuff that he would come up with, some maintenance that it would hit you hard later on. So, and it was, I really like it because it felt almost, and thanks to the dev version, because how dev version worked, I believe how dev version works now as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as least back then, dev version was, I create something in the morning, I commit it, I marked it for dev version, and the next day, people could already try it. So basically, I have some idea, I put it there, and I would get almost instantaneous feedback. I don't think I've been in so fast-moving development since, but it was very, very humbling because, of course, seeing people playing the game, playing the tool, and seeing how things they didn't like and they like, but at the same time being able to react so fast and innovate so fast. That was, I love that era. And in Eden, we had a bit similar, but because we had more, I think, more better defined of backlog of things we wanted to do, it was less reactive, I believe, than in Zeus Editor. Oh yeah, that man is writing now. Once per week. Oh my god, once per week. That is so. No, it's still compared to other games, that's insane.
Yeah, how times have changed.
I like managing this internally. Like, big kudos to Joris and Petka and Iceman, who back then were producers and in turn eventually became project leads. Sadly, none of them are with us in Bohemia. Petka is in Manager Games, Iceman and Warhorse. But basically, those guys plus Cornel Funland, who was managing marketing, and of course Jake Rowe. Like, there was this theme, like the organization of the whole project and how well-oiled machine it was. It's also incredible to think about how, because I realized when we started making, I think we did some game jams on when we joined Infusion as an Amsterdam team, and we did like 2 weeks game jam internally to learn the new tools. And we realized that we don't know how to make games because for years, it was 2019, so basically for years, not only we were used to make Arma, we were also used to make only DLCs. And there is a vast difference when we are doing extensions for well-established, stable enough product. And because like Loss of War, you could not make Loss of War as a first campaign of the product. Yeah. Loss of War was really possible only because the platform was established, assets were there, nothing much else was moving. And so and then we realized when we wanted to make Game Jam on the new engine, like, how do you make games? Like, how do you come up with games? And even without DLCs, even a lot of us, we realized we worked only on Arma before. And of course, Arma has a lot of stuff figured out for you. Of course, you have a gun in your hands and it's authentic game. So there's no like auto heal or something. So you don't need to figure out a lot of stuff. To be fair, you have to, because in Refuge, we also started like realizing like, how do you make Arma? Because we have to start everything from scratch. And it was a very healthy process to even realize what is Arma, and also what is Arma we can make in limited scope and scope in which you can grow it further. Because sometimes Arma 3, you could say that bloated a bit, and there are a lot of features which may be no longer needed, but you have to keep them around for backwards compatibility. So yeah, it is. It was very interesting to realize this. I don't know why I started talking about this. You need to keep put me back on track.
No, you're good. Yeah, it's so yeah. Basically, I think a lot of people got the idea for that. And I think in terms of your which you see excitement from, I think they both go tangentially and like are hand in hand with like with a lot of that. But I guess looking back and then and then we'll kind of shift over to the community questions. But I guess looking back in the last 10 years, like, obviously you've already touched on some memories from 2019, but is there any like particular notable memory from your time while you worked in Arma 3, or anything from all that time that just stands out in your mind?
I fondly remember going to Gamescom. I mean, Gamescom is a horrible experience if you're in the public section because
Oh.
it is loud arena, like loud hall. So if you are talking, your voice is gone within half a day. You need to do it for a whole week. So basically, you then get destroyed after end of the day, and you check and you some spare ribs because basically you need to get as many calories. And being in a public booth, that was really at a time where Daisy was popular, so a lot of people were going to the booth. But Arma 3 was also very early on, and so there was a lot of popularity there as well. And it was insanely taxing experience. But what justified for me was that I got to meet the people. A lot of players went there, and very often there was enough of us that sometimes when there was some community modder or player would arrive and I know them or they know me, that we would go out of the hall outside where it was more, well, you could actually talk because there was not loud, and we would just for half an hour discuss something. Then I had to go back, but it was so nice to meet these people in person, and because very often if they like mention something on forum, it's like we know it from COVID that it's a more formal environment being online, and sometimes you don't mention everything. But just talking to them, and they would come up with some things which they would normally not mention, or just point out how they use stuff, how they play the game, and then realizing, oh, I know that, or watching them play. That was also very interesting, just standing behind them and watching them play and being able to consult with them. Like, why did you do this? It's like because like they like you're playing it wrong. Well, of course we cannot say that. Like players never play something wrong. It's you always learn so much just by watching people play and shattering your assumptions about stuff. But yeah, meeting people on Gamescom. And I remember that next year I went to Gamescom again, but I was in the business section, much healthier for my voice. But I get to meet only journalists, and I was just parroting over and over again the same, basically the lines, just showcasing the game. And it was more calming, but I always try to find some way how to get back to public section and hope that there will be some modders who I could meet, or I ask back then, okay, on Jquery to, like, for example, text me if some modder is there. So that was a very nice experience. Another nice experience was working in Mniszek Podbrdy when we went once working a bit later. A nice thing about Mniszek Podbrdy is it's beautiful. You may have seen photos. It's a cottage in the middle of nowhere on the edge of the forest.
Yeah.
It's the most creatively stimulating environment I've ever worked on. Like, yeah, the being on the canal side in Amsterdam, it's lovely, but there, like, coming to the office and I found out that there are sheep or sheep herd on the company grounds there. It had its charm, and it's wooden cottage. Basically, it's as far from office environment or corporate environment you can think of. However, it takes 45 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was nice as well. Read my blog post at moriki.com about that experience. Anyway, shameless plug. But yes, sometimes that meant that if you missed the connection, you basically have to wait for another bus. I remember once it was a day of disasters where me and actually Joris and Jay wanted to go home to because we were living in Prague, of course, and we were supposed to go with one guy producer who was supposed to give us a ride. We start leaving, and then car stops. It broke down. Oh well, whatever. We will go on a bus stop. Bus is leaving in 10 minutes. We're standing there. Bus goes because it was the end stop. So bus goes, return or like rotates back,
Yeah.
and just goes by. Doesn't stop. It's like, what the hell? Okay, fine. The next bus an hour. Let's walk to Mniszek town square where there are buses going every half an hour. We walk there. Well, we are hungry, so we stop by at some restaurant, have a dinner. Then we go to the bus stop. We're waiting, still 10 minutes away. And then maintenance crew arrives, dismantles the bus stop. It was just a pole with a sign. Dismantles the bus stop and it drives away because it was some temporary bus stop because they were doing some reconstruction. And we were just, what the hell just happened? Luckily, we just had to, because there was a temporary, we just walked, I don't know, 200 meters around the corner, and there was then what was there, the normal bus stop. But just seeing there, like, yes, working in Nishek for the day was very creatively stimulating, if sometimes raw experience.
I mean, you also have the famous tank there. You know, the 272.
Oh yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
When did that happen? I don't remember when, but yeah, parking Edita there and then having there. Like, I like returning back to Nishek Porter to always say hi to Edita and yeah.
Also, yeah, the lovely pond, which hopefully you're fortunate not to have jumped into.
I did not nor jumped, neither jumped nor was thrown into.
Yeah.
But the point is, well, several cell phones were lost there during various parties. Yeah, nice thing about it also that there were some barbecue parties because, of course, if you're stuck in Nishek and sometimes, like, if you're sleeping over, like when I moved to Nishek in 2007 or 8, because back then originally I was working externally studying at university, but when I started working in Bohemia, I was actually living in Nishek for almost 1 year. And because others, for example, yours were living there as well, sometimes in the evenings we would be playing Transport Tycoon late in the night, and we literally went through those 100 years of Transport Tycoon. I was focusing on my big business, like transport empire. Him, being classic Dutch, he was building dikes and custom islands, like spending all the billions for just rising, because it was super expensive just to modify tiles on the water. So I think he had more fun than me.
Alrighty. Well, I guess we'll start to transition into a little community Q&A.
Yes.
So, like I had said a couple times throughout, if there's any questions you guys have about Zeus or Eden Editor or anything like that, or just Arma in general, feel free to throw them out. We'll filter them through. But to get us started, I just have one quick question. Do you miss the 2D editor at all? No. Nope, just
Why?
dead set. All right, perfect. And then I guess another follow up for that is, how many hours would you say you've logged in Arma 3 alone? But also, how many hours do you think you've logged in the editor?
I cannot easily check it because we have company account for Steam, so I have it split across both.
Yeah.
I think it would total 10,000 hours.
10,000. Okay.
But keep that in mind that very often it is that for developers it's different. Sometimes I would have Arma open the whole day. I remember the cases where I open editor no, that was Zeus. When I was working something on Zeus, I would open it, I returned from lunch, I open it, was doing something, then I'm doing a bit of a coding. I'm saying bit of a coding. 3-4 hours later, I switch back to Zeus, and our game was running in the background, and it's like, why is there night now? Right, the time has passed meanwhile in the game, while it was in the background.
Yeah.
But so yeah, very often it was really, I'm coding in SQF in some notepad, and the game is in the background. So the clock keeps ticking, but I'm not actually working like doing anything there. So yes, I may have 10,000 hours, but actively it would still be a few thousands, but like maybe 5. But it's still the development. Actually playing Arma, I think it would be in hundreds actually.
Okay.
Not thousands.
Yeah. We did have one question earlier that asked if you had a chance to implement another feature into Eden Editor now, what would it be?
So for a long time, I wanted to implement being able to publish compositions, but the guys meanwhile added it recently. I discussed the attaching stuff.
Yep. Attaching.
What I wanted, this is a tricky question. I would have to actually go to our old analysis and figure. Well, one thing I always wanted, but there was no way to it, is to actually, I mean, we did it in Reforger, but it was to really merge Zeus and Eden and have one tool for everything. So that's, I a bit regret that it was split like that. And I think what I would change would integrate Zeus more natively in Eden. That anytime you are in preview mode, you can just check Zeus and do anything there. Because especially in Arma Reforger, we found it so normal, so natural that I can anytime. Oh, that would be it. In Zeus, like really, you had to configure it. Like if you want Zeus into the editor, or sorry, in the Eden editor, if you want to use Zeus, you need to put there some module. You need to somehow set it up. Why? Why would I? What? Why were we doing it this way? In Reforger, Game Master is there natively. It's literally from pause button. You don't. You have to opt out almost from a Game Master, and it feels so normal that if there I would do something different in Arma 3, I would integrate Zeus more natively in that. When you run the game from Eden Editor, you just have Zeus done.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, I can see that, like being super helpful also as a mission maker or something like that, or scenario maker. But yeah, I mean,
And to be fair, there are modes for that.
yes. As I always say, it's kind of like the saying with there's an app for that. I always say there's always a mod for that. Like same thing, same thing. Like if there's something that hasn't been created, I'm surprised. So
fun fact: when we were starting analysis for Reforger Editor, we wanted to see what is the stress test, what is the maximal use case, and Hendrik Offenberg, a designer in Amsterdam, downloaded like 200 gigabytes of mods. Some people in chat will be like, those are rookie numbers. But basically, we downloaded as many possible mods as we could. And then we opened Editor and wanted to see how much you need to scroll through all of that. And when we saw it, like that was really then, that was influenced then for Reforger decision. Yeah, we cannot have a hierarchy list. It needs to be labeled. So you need to be able to filter by multiple criteria. But yeah, 200 gigs. That was insane.
all right. Well, we had another question about so either as a developer or as a as a modder or something like how did you approach getting into the new scripting language of Infusion, like when Infusion came about?
Infusion is a bit no. It was easy for me in Infusion because already around 2016 I started doing some my hobby project on Unity, and that's C sharp. And when I switched to Infusion, well, Infusion script is so close to C sharp that within a week I knew what I was doing. Yeah, I need to learn what are various functions and whatnot. So it took me another, let's say, half year to getting details. But if you know C sharp and you start with Infusion, you will quickly know around. And sometimes I then went back to Unity because, for example, on Unity, I developed a game. When my son was born, I announced the game through a Unity game in Shameless Plug. If you go to baby.mořický.com, you can play it. But already during developing that was already a time where I was working on Infusion. And sometimes I was working on in Unity and it's like, I miss some feature from Infusion. Like, for example, I know in Infusion, automatically all scripts are running also in Vault Editor. So it's very easy to put there some functionality which should work in Vault Editor. In Unity, you need to go extra step for it, and it doesn't work as comfortably. And I realized, like, why? It's so nice to have it in Infusion. There are, of course, I'm not saying Infusion is everything, but there are tidbits here and there, of course, where scripting in Unity is better, something is better in Infusion. But what I, of course, like is that Infusion is our engine, and if there is something I don't like, I can just write it to programmers, and very often they're like, makes sense, and the next day it's there. It's like, oh my god, that's so cool. So having direct line, that was actually the biggest paradigm shift when I to be fair, still struggle with that because I am former modder. It's so long time ago. Like I ceased to be modder in early 2000s, but still my initial reaction to everything is to hack it around. And I have to consciously stop myself. No, you have programmers you can ask. You can ask. And then when they improve it, they will not improve it only for you, they will improve it for everybody. So that's also a lesson learned. And I think every modern or a lot of modders who then join Bohemia may struggle with that. That you have direct line to programmers. You can improve stuff directly in the engine. Yeah. But it's so cool.
Yeah, and obviously we get suggestions and feedback all the time about that, and we're trying obviously implementing those things as soon as they really can consider them and get them in. But yeah. I guess so. Another question that was passed was so obviously aircraft mods in general have been very impressive over the years, but especially something like they were asking is like aircraft mods and things like that. What's your opinion on seeing Arma stretch as far as it is, and whether it's like the limitations or like the basically expanding on on the sandbox of Arma in terms of like aircraft mods or whatever they may be?
I mean, it's a bit tricky because we pride ourselves for large terrains, but when you sit on a jet aircraft, you blink and you're on the opposite side of the map and
Sure.
leaving. So
You know,
I definitely find the most fun I had with aircrafts was playing for Operation Flashpoint. There was the Camel, the old bipedal, the biplane, and doing good fights for that. But of course, I always love. So for wet planes, I always like them as a nice prop. I mean, lots of war. We literally have a cluster strike there. We send there the plane. I think I even coded it that if you have Jets DLC installed instead of the normal CSAT plane, it will use that whatever is it called, basically the fancier plane from the Jets DLC. But so as a props, they are cool. But for gameplay, of course, it's more tricky. But still, there are missions. It's always I don't remember what mod or what game mode was it. Maybe even Vanilla Warfare. But I always like the idea that I'm playing this large scale multiplayer, and somebody there, some other player, is flying there with A10 and giving us air support, and we need to throw strobes or smokes, and the person will do strafe run, and sometimes there's blue on blue because we were somehow in the way, and knowing it's not AI, it's some other player, and we need to communicate with them. It's amazing. But at the same time, very often it leads to we in Amsterdam team we played some mission from the Prairie Fire DLC, the Vietnam DLC, and there was some cool mission where I don't remember the mission name. There was one of the missions which are directly part of the expansion. But basically, there were some spec ops going behind enemy line, and I was like, I will play as a helicopter pilot. Except my mission was, I fly there, I insert them. They do their own thing, but there is no gameplay for the pilot. So the mission designer solved it by giving me some random procedural tasks completely unrelated from what my buddies were doing. And then when they were finished, I would fly there and pick them up, and it was my only interaction. So of course, combining gameplay for people in the air who are much faster and often more powerful than people on the ground. I think for us, the biggest lesson for it was the campaign in Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead, where we created a campaign that there were 4 playable slots, or like even perhaps more, but basically 4 main playable slot types. There was Spec Ops, Infantry, Tank Guy, and Apache Pilot. How the missions often ended up? Apache Pilot solves everything before any of the guys on the ground can get there. So ideas sounded cool on the paper, but it turned out to be not well balanced in reality, and that's why we never really repeated this in the future.
Yeah, and it's even going back a little bit, like specifically, like you were saying, aircraft. Like, but a lot of people out there are using things that have like interactable cockpits within, like similar to DCS or something like that, but inside of Arma 3, where they have Apaches or different, even the UH-60, like having kind of like clickable, toggable switches and things like that, which has expanded.
Yeah, like I mean, it definitely makes sense if you want to experience it on your own, if you want to just fly over the terrain, or if there's a mission single player specific for it, or even if there is a dogfight. But once you start combining airplane with players on the ground, balancing gets difficult. Again, it's fine in a more role-playing server. I'm not saying role-playing like Out is Life, but more like really there is some clan or squad which they have their own mission, their own game master, and one of them will be for example, A10 pilot, and they know they are role-playing in specific way. So they know that the guy in A10 will strictly follow the mission and will not start strafing everything somewhere further ahead. So in those scenarios, it makes perfect sense. But in some less controlled environment like public servers, of course, the balancing is an issue.
Yeah. So obviously you've designed and did a lot of kind of spent a lot of time in the editor. Was there ever a mission or something, scenario or game mode that you kind of, even as a proof of concept, developed that you really was like your favorite over the years, or something you always think back on that even if it was published or not, or
No, Loss of War. For me, Loss of War and that campaign is the high point of what I could tell as a story and how I could tell it in Arma. It came to be absolutely accidentally when. No, to be fair, Loss of War and Army of the Czech Republic DLC in Arma 2, not the one which was necessarily released. The ACR DLC had a bit tainted history because we actually developed it even before PMC. Then it was shelved for production reasons, and then different team got back to it and finalized it. And I remember we had there some really cool ideas for missions. There was a mission, and because we knew, okay, Czech Army is not known for large-scale military operations. What can we do to showcase the army and all its uses? So we had a mission where you're not shooting at all. You're helping in Czechia, but in a flooded village. Because floods are happening in Czechia, and very often it's army which is sent to help. So you were driving a Zodiac boat around and picking people stuck on the roofs. How we did it, by the way, we took 50 by 50 meters pond object and we just spawn it in the grid in a normal village, so it looked like it's flooded, and we decreased view distance so we cannot see far away. But it turned out to be actually quite fun mission. Or whereas a dog handler, I scripted some basic behavior for a dog, and so it was supposed to be like night mission, and implied it was somewhere in Yugoslavia, or then it was moved to Chernobyl, and then basically you were hunting war criminals, and you were not hunting war criminals, your dog was hunting them, and you were supposed to follow the dog and neutralize some opposition which could be there, but not kill the people you were supposed to arrest. So there were some quite inventive missions there, and one of them was actually provincial reconstruction team. So from Afghanistan, and the idea is you're driving a convoy. No, it was not a convoy because how convoys? You were driving your Humvee to a location. It was fully procedural mission. It took the slice of Pakistan. It picked some location there, picked your starting location, and you were supposed to drive there. There you stayed. So that was implied that you were helping locals. I think you were building a school, so it was procedurally spawning some objects. There was a time lapse, from movies time lapse that like objects are moving like rapidly, like almost teleporting, imply that some time has passed, and then you were supposed to drive back. Sometimes there would be IEDs on the road, sometimes there would be ambush, so fully procedural mission. And I remember when we were starting Loss of War, we knew the theme, but like what will be the single player content about it? And so I brought this idea back. What if I drive somewhere and I need to build something like some humanitarian camp there, and we would see the time lapse, and then I put it step forward. What if I can switch it somehow on a key? So I quickly prototype that again. This set of objects is the present time, this set of objects is past time, and I also already very early on I found Oreo Castro on the map, which is village which is already in the map, completely destroyed, and I try to position their buildings which are not destroyed on their exact positions, and I just hide them, reveal them, and we looked at it. It's like, this look cool. Let's make a campaign around that, and that the idea stemmed from it, and it just grew and grew, and we really used it to show how actions have consequences, which became a tagline of that. And then we play Titanfall 2, and they have the same concept where you move back and forward in time, and actually in shooter, and it's like, god damn it, and we thought we were original.
Yeah, and I
so yeah, Loss of War and many ideas for Arma 2 ACR DLC would be probably I see as the most creatively rich. And there were many missions which were not released. One thing which I wanted to make, we call it back in Mosaic. We will not get to it, so I don't think there's a problem of me saying it. So there's an idea called Mosaic. It was supposed to be originally for British Armed Forces, and the idea is that you would play one mission, one operation, but from multiple points of view. Actually, a little bit got to it, the other team got to it in TAC Ops, but the idea is you unlock it little by little, that you first play as special forces, and then drone soldiers, and a tank guy, And but the idea is that even the storyboard unwraps. So sometimes if you think something is like that, on the next mission you realize, like at the beginning you would not know anything. You were sort of like support squad. You were supposed to like almost like in Black Hawk Down. You were just the Rangers. You were not the Delta Force. You were just the guys who were securing the area. Then you would play eventually the Delta Force. But I also like the idea that it really showed the action as consequences, because at the beginning you were supposed to, I don't know if it was at the beginning or the end, but because of Pakistan, at one point you were, oh no, there was one mission which you would play as a CIA officer, and that was the sort of last segment, which would be where you reveal everything, because of course CIA knows everything. But as you complete the mission, you extract with some hostages, and you are taking off in an airplane, and then the airplane is shot down by stingers. And so sort of you succeeded the mission, but at the last moment, sort of it's not shown if you survived or not. And then the very last segment of the mission of the story was that you play as the same CIA officer 30 years prior, when Pakistan was still fighting Soviets, because it's very much inspired by Afghanistan. You're playing as this same CIA officer, much younger, supplying stingers to locals. So it would really show the hyperbole that, like, oh, it was the weapons you supplied which shot you down. This never got released, sadly. We never had time for it, to be fair, but several ideas like that. Or another idea was also for Arrowhead, because Arrowhead was nice thing about it that there were a lot of different factions. You would have United States, but also Czech army, German army. There was United Nations, and we had the idea back then that you would have one operation, but how would the different factions do it? So idea was Americans was like airstrike, UAV, special forces, everything. Germans, meticulous operation, sneak in, and then get the operation called off, because it was inspired by several situations which like that happened as well. Local army was really like bring together several guerrilla camps and attack the area. Or there was also, you would play as United Forces, United Nations, that you bring supplies to locals, and they will then attack the Death and Valor camps. So also like almost what if, how different factions behave when with absolutely the same operation.
Gotcha. It seemed to have cut out just a little bit. Stand by 1 second. I'll try to. Oh, I think we're back. There we go. All right, we're good. We got you back. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I have, I guess, one other curious question of, so as someone who is basically partially the creator of Zeus, which do you prefer to be at? Do you prefer to be God himself, like Zeus himself, or do you want to be on the ground, or you prefer the fighting perspective on the ground? Which do you enjoy?
No, I like Zeus. I prefer Zeus, but what I especially like about Zeus is, very often in the RTS games, you shoot to kill. You are there and your intention is to kill players, for example. I know in what game was, I can't remember. But what I like about Zeus most is to take over some AIs and shoot at players, but not with intention to kill them, to scare them. I'm really like role playing, like, oh, you guys are too exposed, you should take cover. But of course, I don't want to kill them. It's too disconnecting experience. But so I'm intentionally shooting in the air above them. Sometimes I'll shoot at the obstacle which they are sort of in front of, behind, and this pretending to be this guiding experience, almost like creating experience, not necessarily wanting to kill them, and thinking about how to create experience. I always found it the most exciting. That's why also in Reforger for a long time we did not have the takeover feature, and it was really noticeable. No, you cannot have a game master without being able to take over AI. That's absolutely paramount feature. Gotcha. So yeah, that's what I found the most fun. Not only being Zeus, but also taking over various AIs. And I know sometimes also pretending like, oh, I'm civilian and help me, and using voice over net, also like talking to players. So many opportunities there.
And there's definitely, and the community is definitely taking that and use, like, because you can also have more than one Zeus at a time, right? So you can have kind of assistant moderators or things like that to kind of help you out and play those roles a little bit and do a little role playing here and there.
That's another thing why in Arma 3 it's limited that you have one Zeus and one moderator, and it's one thing we also realized in Reforger. why to limit it this way? And then we added public voting. Like if people want more game masters, well, they can just vote for more. Done.
Yeah, true. All right. Well, we only have probably time for a few more questions. So if anyone has any last ones they want to throw in chat, feel free and do so now. But yeah, I mean, I guess you said you had also worked a bit on Contact, correct? Like, and so
Yes.
I guess could you just expand a little bit on that? Of like, what aspects of that did you help influence or contribute to?
Well, our inspirations were mainly, well, literally Contact by Carl Sagan, both the book
Yeah.
and the movie, and then the Arrival, the movie, which was released roughly the same time, and it's also very authentic looking. And our approach was, in short, to be as authentic as possible. To see, so yes, it was tempting to be Independence Day and shoot everything, and it
Yeah.
might have been actually easier, but we were trying to find a gameplay which could more show the exploration, the unknown, and finding more about aliens. The whole electromagnetic spectrum mechanic was by me, and what I actually like about Contact personally most, and I realized we actually for a long time try to develop projects like this, that especially in Amsterdam with law support, that we want to make projects which are educational not only for players but also for us. Just because, like, roughly when we are doing research, like 10% of that ends up in the game. Like, I learned so much about electromagnetic spectrum. I learned so much about humanitarian missions and United Nations and all the stuff connected to it for these projects, just to portray it correctly. And it's always so fun to work on a project where you're learning about how real world works, and then you can, I think it generally makes you a better person. And then, so for Contact, we also then, of course, try to not only Contact, but also to try to make it that even playing it will, that you then are left with something, some knowledge that you feel that the game gave you something, and it was just not a waste of time. Like, it could have been fun, but there are a lot of games which are fun for their own and they are fine. But I cannot imagine working on a game which is just pure fun. I always would want to work on something which is extra stuff, extra overreach, extra educational step, both for players and for myself.
And the community has definitely taken a bit of the sci-fi, further with
Yeah.
mods and things like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, like some things even have original kind of IPs for. I think
Yeah.
of like Scion Conflict. It does Scion, or sorry, it does sci-fi and like as in the Arma kind of universe. But what is your perspective on like the sci-fi side of things for Arma, and kind of how the community's also expanded some of that for mission building and Zeusing and things like that.
You mean specifically related to Contact? Because of course Arma 3 itself is in sci-fi setting like near future.
Yeah. So either from your perspective of like sci-fi being an Arma 3.
Is it really a sci-fi?
Well, no, I
Like,
guess
like
that side
just
of it.
recently, yeah, again, just recently watching, I don't know, the videos from Ukraine and people dropping bombs from the UAVs. I like, yeah, we had it in Loss of War. We thought it's insane. It proved to be realistic. So actually, for some point when we inherited, like when Arma was originally developed by Brno-Face and Mishek, and there were some lot of creative revisions there. At some point, we even thinking, should we push it back to 2020? Because let's face it, we are not as, I know, we don't have cyborgs and laser weapons, which what people often associate with 2030s. And so we thought maybe we should push it earlier, but by then I think the train was already moving, so we did not do it. But yeah, the game is a lot of stuff, a lot of Battlefield stuff nowadays is or stuff you can see in various battlefields all over the world is much further ahead than what we had in Arma. So I would not say it's completely sci-fi.
No,
And when it comes to Contact, it is obviously sci-fi, but we definitely try to approach it very carefully. So that's why Contact is not part of the normal game. That's why you need to run it separately. We did not want to, I dare to say, pollute normal Arma with aliens. So we took steps there. Disadvantage, of course, sometimes there are some features like, no, I think actually even the electromagnetic spectrum device was usable in the game, but one thing I regret about Contact, it's not as moddable as it could be. It's something we also learned, that it's much easier to make a moddable game to strong platform in a larger team. Contact DLC was developed by a small team. I think it was, 10 of us? I don't know. So very often we had to take shortcuts to hard code stuff, not make it fully moddable. I tried sometime, and definitely Maciej Fan Reichardt in community, he tried to really make sure it's as moddable as possible, because of course he has strong modding experience, but it was not always. So even the electromagnetic spectrum device, yes, it's there in vanilla data, but it doesn't work as it works in Contact, because how it's implemented in Contact, it's fully tailored for the campaign. So yeah, with Sci-fi, I'm glad to see how people took the assets from there, but sadly they cannot use all the features from Contact just because how they work only in that environment.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I said, there's definitely been mods and expansions for that in terms of other sci-fi settings as well, things like that.
My favorite sci-fi setting is one contestant, or it's not fully sci-fi, but one contestant for Make Arma Not War was when you were able to fly into space. So you put on a fighter jet, and some crazy scripting hackery, suddenly you were in orbit. I played it around the time when I was really into Kerbal Space Program. So it's like, I know this. Also, I knew it's unrealistic.
And there was definitely.
And by the way, and when it comes to sci-fi, I always like Halo mods. And mainly, I always respected about Halo mods how Microsoft allows them, and not only allows them, but 343 Industries even endorse them. It was because, of course, modding very often it's licensing struggle, and it was nice to see then even the developers of original Halo featured in one of their waypoint blocks, the modders of the Halo mod for Arma, and it's because, of course, Microsoft knows about modding thanks to, for example, Microsoft Flight Simulator. So it's always nice to see other companies respecting modding and making stuff easier for modders.
Yeah. We did have one question from Lou Montana. You may not Lou. He's a Bohemian himself.
Yeah. Does it count as a community question?
Well, he's in the chat. You might as well ask him. But he did want to know what your thoughts on Game Master's Director, or what's your thoughts on a Game Master's Director, kind of like Left 4 Dead, if you're familiar with that at all.
Well, as I mentioned, we try to go that way. I think Natural Selection 2 was a game where we were. No, wait, but Director is not Game Master. That's just a smart AI, isn't it? That it is a system. It's not a person doing it. It's a system adapting to player, if I'm not mistaken. It's a long time since I played Left 4 Dead, so I don't remember. But definitely, we, for example, were inspired by Natural Selection, which is like that there are some terminals, you can get them, and then you are in more strategic view. But I mean, I like them, but ultimately for Arma, having less restrictive Zeus proved to be more beneficial.
For sure. Well, I think we've come close to the end here. I just want to ask, is there any other thoughts that you want to express based on the 10 years of Arma is a long time, and it's crazy to think it's already been that long. But any
Stop saying that. I feel old.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, or anything you want to express to the community?
It's insane how long living this game. Like, when you look at it, between Arma 2 and Arma 3, it was 4 years? Before that also there was very short gaps, and Arma 3 it just lived so long. It's insane. And partly it's, of course, how the game itself is structured and how it was managed and how the platform is stable, but you cannot have, yes, you can have nice modding a platform, but if nobody comes to modding it, it's all for nothing. So definitely seeing those thousands and thousands of workshop creations, I'm still amazed, like 300,000 subscriptions, and that's not even the highest number. There are for millions. Just how big it is and how the modders organize often themselves. Yes, there is often drama, stealing content and whatnot, but most of the time, how the community manages themselves, supports themselves, seeing all the tutorials, people intentionally leaving their work readable by others so others can learn by reverse engineering and or not being mad when people get inspired, as long as good crediting is there, of course. Like seeing how people can be adult about this, not be about whining kids about, oh, somebody's done my work. and how it evolves, and how this idea leads to this idea and this mod, and then somebody bundles mods together, and then there's some ideas, and how it has its own history. It's breathtaking to see it, and we could not have anticipated. Like, even when he started Arma 3, the best we hoped was like, oh, it will be rough like Arma 2 if they even want to steal all our players. And then I like to see even like what is very often considered on the fringe of Arma, like seeing live mods, seeing Battle Royale, Wasteland, all these mods which are not pure Arma, like, and there are struggles for us devs as well, because yeah, we are developing military game, but very often we need to cater to these modders because we don't want to break it for them, or some feature needs to be friendly to them. But still, seeing how people can take this platform and turn it into so many different experiences, and I think the best testament for it is like this game literally kickstarted two major genres: hardcore survival and battle royale. And it was not us kickstarting them, it was modders who took them. So I can't wait for another genre which will come from Arma.
Yeah.
No pressure community, by the way.
Yeah, I think you said it best. I think it's amazing how all these different different parts of the community and things that they've come up with, and on top of just providing the platform, and that's what ultimately Arma is.
But fun fact with battle royale, Brandon Green, player unknown, he was actually in Make Arma Not War. He ended up second in multiplayer.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, people can actually go look up even still the entries and stuff like in the winners, obviously from Make Arma Not War, the competition. So, yeah. But all right, well, I think we will go ahead and call it there. I want to thank everyone, like I for coming and watching, and obviously thanks to you, Karel, for coming and answering questions and being part of this. It's on a journey of, like I said, 10 years. Next month on September 12th is the 10th year anniversary exactly. So,
but wait, the next anniversary will be celebrate 2033 or 2035?
Why not both?
True. Oh my God! Soon, some earlier missions, I think in TACOPS, are starting 2026. Soon, Arma. We will be. Our Arma 3 timeline and the real timeline will start overlapping, and that's when we will feel.
I think.
Guys, Miller is already out there. He was born 1993, if I remember correctly, so he's probably already active military. Just saying.
I think 2035 is going to be an interesting year for the Arma community. But thank you again, and thanks again. Like I said, everybody, enjoy yourselves, and as always, see you on the battlefield. But have a good one.
It was a very pleasant evening. Thank you very much.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye.